A topic of conversation that pops up quite frequently is what killed G.I. Joe? What was it that made Hasbro stop? Why did they stop making them? Why did they stop selling them? And why aren't they catering to us, the collector? Just a little bit of online searching, and I came across a couple of articles. I've made myself some notes here that I'm going to go off of for this video so that I stay on topic. 2014, the Columbus Free Press article by GIJoe. That was G.I. Joe's 50th anniversary. A lot of this is going to be quoted from the article, so bear with me. Recent news suggests toy maker Hasbro is planning to mark the occasion by killing off the brand. The official G.I. Joe Con announced that Hasbro wouldn't be attending the 2014 show. The news came as a huge surprise since Hasbro has always been at the official convention to give fans a preview of the coming year. The reason? Hasbro no longer has a G.I. Joe brand team. The group responsible for planning, designing, and marketing the toys. The toy line is dead. Now keep in mind, this article is from 2014. With its inherent ties to the U.S. military, G.I. Joe has always been affected by American politics. Though the original 12-inch figure was hugely popular, it was first introduced in 1964. Now, what was going on in the 1960s? Vietnam. Growing cultural dissatisfaction with the war in Vietnam led Hasbro to make the line more adventure-oriented in the 70s. So we had the adventure team come about, which was meant to get away from the military aspect of the toys. By the 1980s, 82 to be exact, the line was pretty much science fiction. They were still, ostensibly, an elite unit of U.S. military specialists. But they were different enough not to scare off parents who remembered Vietnam. Rather than sticking to loyal recreations of military gear, G.I. Joe members were armed with lasers and all sorts of other accessories. They flew around in futuristic flight pods. Some of them were sailors and some of them were Marines. But some were also ninjas and astronauts. We had the Star Brigade. We had the Ninja Force. The Mega Marines. You want to talk about a science fiction oriented figure? The Mega Marines were science fiction oriented. Loved them. They had monsters they were fighting. G.I. Joe, a real American hero, was a success. It wasn't quite as much of a success as its sister line, Transformers. Some of that is likely due to the fact that humans, even with jetpacks, will never be as cool as giant robots. And like I said, a lot of what I'm talking about here is directly quoted from this article back in 2014. Transformers as a concept is apolitical. It has no political ties to anything. Transformers was a huge international success, even becoming one of the first Western cartoons to air in communist China. G.I. Joe never found an audience outside the U.S. The cartoon never felt entirely comfortable with its own political implications. The military aspect was often overlooked in favor of personal stories mixed with sci-fi craziness. It felt like a military cartoon as written by liberals in need of a paycheck. It was likely due to this discomfort with the heroes that the villains became the most memorable characters. A lot of people ask, why is Cobra so wildly popular? Why do they have so many cool figures? Why are so many people into Cobra? Well, that's partially why. That's the reason why Cobra became more popular, in my opinion. According to one former Hasbro employee, the quote-unquote, the problem with G.I. Joe is that they have a great set of villains and a worthless protagonist team. Arguably, one tied so directly to the U.S. military that combined international disapproval of the U.S. military actions and domestic fatigue from 2 decades-long wars rendered the brand toxic. The last time that happened, we got the Adventure Team. Now, in my belief, I've been saying this for a while, I think that an interactive, adventure team-oriented G.I. Joe is what we need for this next iteration. If the brand is going to be reignited, if the brand is going to survive, it needs to be something that can involve its audience. It doesn't need to be geared toward us. It needs to be geared toward kids. It needs to be a learning experience that they're going to enjoy. And I think that Adventure Team is the right path to that. In the end, one good thing can be said for Hasbro's Stand Down. A walk through any West Virginia Walmart will tell you there is a market that fully embraces American militarism. But it's one a company like Hasbro would be rightly wary to court. And in our obsessively capitalist society, the idea that they would just as soon shelve the brand as groom it for the kids of Fox News viewers shows a surprising and admirable restraint. Its unwillingness to make a genuine political statement is likely what killed it. At this point, that seems like a mercy killing. Okay, now, keep in mind that these views expressed are not my views, the views of my channel, or anyone affiliated with me. This is me explaining to you or reading to you what was said in an article in 2014. I also have another article coming up that I'm going to talk about. 2016 is the last year that GIJoe saw any shelf time in retail stores. 2018 was the last year of the GIJoe convention set. So I'm going to give you the information from another article here. The Guilfordian, February 2019 by Liam Connolly. Ever since its humble beginnings as an action figure line in 1964, GIJoe has been an icon to the youth of America, whether it was through the toys, cartoons, or the comics. The Joes have had an indomitable impact on pop culture, waging their brutal war against the evil forces of Cobra wherever freedom is threatened. But alas, our real American heroes have seen better days. The ongoing comic book aside, GIJoe has almost completely fallen off the face of the earth in the last few years. What was once an inspirational tale of brave soldiers of war on terrorism has been overshadowed and forgotten in favor of whatever superhero movie of the week is playing at the cinema. While there is no official reason why, the responses seem to vary depending on who you ask. Some say that it's the brand's mediocre movies that were released in 2009 and 2013 that did everything they could to destroy and dissect the fantastic stories and characters built around GIJoe. Now, we talked about that in another video, and how a lot of people felt about those movies, and also what they did to the toy lines with those movies. Others say that the company, Hasbro, simply wished to put more emphasis on other properties. Now that is a possibility as well. They've really stepped it up with Transformers here lately. Other more ridiculous reasons ranged from GIJoe not being socially acceptable in the current political climate to promoting toxic masculinity in young men. Okay, I don't think that those are necessarily ridiculous claims, because they're claims that have been made. The claims themselves may be ridiculous, and that's probably what the article is referring to, is that it's ridiculous to think that. I would agree. While I could go on and on about why all of these reasons are utterly moronic, I'll just say that it's high time we stop letting others dictate our entertainment through their own political and social stances, and remember what made GIJoe so great. The series was also quite ahead of its time in having one of the most naturally diverse casts I have ever seen. Women and minorities like Lady J and Stalker fought alongside guys like General Hawk and Flint as equals, not once bothering to annoyingly emphasize or even mention the fact that any of them differed in race or gender. To fans, the series was extremely well done because at the end of the day, these characters were not defined by their backgrounds and appearances, but by their personalities and their decisions. What could revive the line? Personally, I'm voting for Adventure Team. You could go with Adventure Team / sci-fi approach. There's all kinds of things that could be done. New movies centered on something other than being military. You know what? When I was a kid, Indiana Jones was one of my absolute favorite movies of all time. All of the movies, the entire film series was one of my favorite things to watch. When I was a kid, I actually wanted to be an archaeologist. I still have a deep passion for history and learning all about it. So, plenty of other kids out there could get into the same things. Plenty of other kids out there could grow to enjoy and love an adventure team oriented GI Joe. If you look back into the 60s and 70s, if you look at the original adventure team line of figures, GI Joe was always doing something really cool. You had a vehicle that was like a 6-wheeled Jeep with a crane on the back, and it had a mummy, and you had all of these different adventure sets where G.I. Joe was going to some faraway land, and he was off on some crazy adventure, and it was awesome. I don't think anything killed G.I. Joe. We have at least one, possibly two more movies coming up. They're going to be completely different. It's going to be a Snake Eyes origin story, and then the other one's an ensemble story. So, I mean, you've got team stuff coming up. You've got G.I. Joe coming back. What they're going to do with the toys, nobody knows. I don't think Hasbro even knows, because I doubt that they've filled the positions to manage that market. Chances are it's going to be something different, though. It may not be geared toward what we as collectors want. And I hope, and I know this sounds terrible, but I hope that it's not. Because for us, our market is either vintage or third party customs. Our market, people our age, they want O-ring figures. Hasbro's not going to make O-ring figures again. It's not going to happen. They'll go with the modern styling and modern theme. So, I hope that you enjoyed this little rant, little discussion, whatever, talking about what killed G.I. Joe and how G.I. Joe's not really dead. So, feel free to engage, discuss, add some comments, ask some questions, share your opinions with me. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more videos. Yo, Joe.